Hello friends and welcome back to another video. I'm Anissa of Nissaillustrations and today I'm going to introduce you to my D&D character Osha, who is a life cleric of Luru. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons now for almost 9 years, and I can honestly say out of all of my characters, Osha is a breath of fresh air. Before we get into it, I want to talk a little bit more about what I'm doing here. This is me painting the newest character design I've done of her, which for this campaign it will most likely be the final one because we plan on wrapping it up later this year or early next year. The campaign I play with her in is called The Sorting Chronicles, and I've had the pleasure of playing with this group since April 2021. Originally, I wasn't going to play Osha in the campaign. I was going to play Willow, another D&D character of mine, but I decided against it after playing with her for a couple of sessions, and not feeling comfortable playing a flirty character with the group just yet. It was before I'd got to know everyone, so I was still very nervous since I'm a pretty shy person. With a lot of us being Final Fantasy players, my fiance found a homebrew book that added Final Fantasy races and classes, which I'll go ahead and link down below if any of you guys are interested. Thanks to that happening, I decided I would play my Final Fantasy 14 character Osha, who is a Makote, hence the cat ears and tail. If you're a Final Fantasy 14 player, her last name probably gave it all away because there are so many Aleapos in the game. A common joke I like to use is keeping up with the Aleapos. When we first started the campaign, she was very naive to the ways of the world. Osha is an optimistic person and a bit of a chatterbox, sometimes saying things before she's really had a moment to think them through. For example, one time she was trying to cheer up a villager in a town named Turok. She suggested turning the giant crater in the middle of the town into, well, a tourist trap. Obviously, this did not go over very well, and to this day, the D&D group will not let me live it down. But her heart was in the right place, I swear. She just wanted to help come up with ideas to bring revenue back to the village. When I created her, I was very much influenced by characters like Usagi from Sailor Moon, Jester from Critical Role, and probably the biggest influence, Ruby from, well, Ruby. Sometimes you can tell with the way she acts, but you can really tell with the style of clothing I like to dress her in. I'm very much a fan of the Lolita style dresses for her and the cutesy aesthetic I have going on. Despite being influenced by these characters, over time she's very much become her own person. So with that being said, I'll talk a bit more about her character and some of the lore behind her before getting into any of the campaign story. Osha was born and raised in a small fishing village named Tikatali. She was the youngest and had two older siblings, a brother named Silas and a sister named Nezrin. Her parents were not well off by any means, but they tried their best by never letting the kids go hungry and did their best at indulging their hobbies and fantasies when possible. Probably the most exciting thing to happen in her childhood was her getting lost in the woods around the time she was 7 years old thanks to a prank by her sister Nezrin. She was obviously very upset and distraught with the situation, especially with her being so young. So she found a tree to curl up next to, trying to hide as it got dark. She cried and cried, begging the gods or whoever would listen to help, and eventually cried herself to sleep. The next part of the narrative gets a little tricky. She swears up and down that a unicorn woke her and helped guide her out of the forest that night. A unicorn that could turn into a beautiful elven woman. While no one quite believed this narrative from such a young child who was, well, known for her overactive imagination, they couldn't deny the strangeness of it all. She was lost nearly a day by the time her father found her at the edge of the clearing near the entrance of the forest, a place where they had searched previously and she hadn't been there. So even when no one else believed her, it was her father who always believed it was the work of the gods. In fact, it was thanks to him that she became such a devout follower of Luru because of his travels between ports. He would collect stories and knickknacks all related to unicorns to bring home, along with the vexed stories of some old unicorn goddess. Osha wouldn't have become the cleric that she is today in the campaign if it wasn't for her father. But all good things must come to an end. When she was around 18, rumors of a strange illness started going around that most common people called dream sickness. While a lot of people didn't take it seriously at her first, her father was one of the first ones to get sick and catch the disease since he worked on a ship. At this point, Osha had taught herself some simple healing spells and started on her path to becoming a full-fledged cleric, but she was in no way able to handle something like this. By that point, her siblings had already started getting in trouble with the law, so it was just her and her mom. They were the ones forced to watch as her father got sicker and sicker with the illness, eventually falling asleep and never waking up. It was on his deathbed that she swore she would one day find a cure to eradicate this terrible disease. One day, not long after her father's passing, her call to adventure came with a little helpful vision from LaRue. She made her way north to one of the sailing villages to get on a ship and started her long journey to a little place called Harm, where she met the rest of the party. The important ones who are still here to this day are Joanne, the human paladin of Mistra, who is also Osha's girlfriend in game, Leona, our tiefling druid, who is best described as an awkward goose, and Seamus, a human sorcerer, whose player had to take a break for a couple of years, so he's only just now getting to join us for sessions again. Bo, our Vera rogue, and Albatross, our elven bard, would come along much later in the campaign, around the time Seamus left. We call ourselves Fury's Angels, which was totally Osha's idea. It's funny because it's based on one of the grumpy NPCs that help us from time to time. During our time adventuring, so much has happened, I don't think I could fit it all into this video, but I'll talk about some of the highlights. Joanne, Leona, and Seamus were originally stowaways on an airship looking for better work on a different continent when Joanne, our paladin, found a sentient sword named Daros. Usha joined them soon after at the first town they visited, where Seamus found a similar weapon named Lyra. From there, after we thought we saved the town, which we found out very recently we didn't, we actually managed to make it worse somehow. But our party was gifted a teleport scroll, which we quickly had to use because we robbed a store and made enemies of someone who we definitely wouldn't have won a fight against. We ended up at this place called the Heron's Nest, a school for training people, mostly nobles and sword fighting and stuff. This was the place where we met the big bad evil guy, but we didn't know it at the time. Osha always thought the guy was sus though, especially after he ended up killing one of the elven princesses. Thanks to Osha being a cleric and another cleric in the party at the time, we were able to preserve her body so she could be revived. Pretty much from there, we kind of ran, and we've been running from him for years in game at this point. At this point in the game, we've all pretty much got these sentient swords. I actually included Osha's in this design. Her name is Tetra, and I had the unique opportunity to come up with a design for my swordian. Because we had found out around the time that they used to be people from an ancient civilization who had put their souls into the swords as a means to save the world and undo a mistake they had made during their time. Nowadays, not much from that civilization exists. We've been slowly finding out more as we go along. As of filming this video, Osha is still searching for the cure for dream sickness. We've made some headway in finding out that it's a magical illness and that Leona's mother figure is probably the one behind it. To add to the drama, we are pretty sure Leona's girlfriend is sick with the beginning stages of dream sickness as well. So we've come to the conclusion Leona is most likely going to have to deal with the problem of her teacher. I'm sure when we do finally find a cure, it will be filled with lots of drama, and I'll be telling you guys all about it. We've been able to check up on Osha's mom twice now in the campaign. Not long after Osha had left, her mother had taken in a young tiefling boy named Kai who had lost both of his parents to dream sickness. He's quite a little tinker who's too smart for his own good, honestly. Osha's only met him once, but she definitely didn't take too well to not being the youngest in the family anymore. Osha's mom has also found love once again. Before we had left to continue our travels, we had helped hook her up with the dockmaster, a half-orc named Fang, and they seemed very happy together. Along the way, we've also run into Osha's siblings not once, but twice. The first time we saved them from becoming slaves after the two of them had the bright idea to try and steal some slaves to sell. Needless to say, it did not work out the way that they thought it was going to work. The last time, however, they had managed to become the sheriffs of the city we were recently in for a tournament. They had the entire town on lockdown because they had planted some magazines on the dockmaster's ship of illicit goblin feet. Then later they had convinced the entire town that there was an illegal wombat ring going on underneath their very noses. Yes, you guys heard it right here. Wombats. It all kind of came to a head after we saw Nesrin sneaking out of the mayor's wagon during the ball for the tournament. We found out that she had stolen a key to get into the mountain where they kept their airships. After Joey had won the solo tournament, Nesrin reached out and asked to speak with Osha alone. It was there that their entire plan came to a head, and we realized the reason they wanted to steal an airship was so that they could become the world's first air pirates. They really do like to dream big and reach for the stars. It did turn out that they had help all along. From an awakened wombat named Mr. Bumbles, Nezrin has made some weird pact with him, and I'm sure it won't bite us in the butt later on. I could definitely not foresee that coming. Luckily, with some quick wit and some explosives we had on hand, we managed to steal an airship before them, so they wouldn't cause more chaos. It definitely wasn't so Osha would be able to say that they got there first and rub it in Nezrin's face at the soonest opportunity. At least that wasn't the reason for the rest of the party. Needless to say, Osha's siblings aren't the party's favorite people, but Osha swears up and down that they mean well and that they're just extremely misguided, Nezrin more so than Silas. At this point, though, she's starting to wonder if she's convincing them of that or trying to convince herself. I honestly have so many stories I could share with you guys about Osha and all the other characters in our campaign. I plan on doing a campaign poster for this campaign at some point during the year, so I think I'll go more into depth with some of the lore then. Plus, that way you guys can put faces to the other party members in our campaign. I've drawn them before on TikTok, and I've talked about their characters a little bit there if you're interested for now. But I think by doing this, it'll be a great way to introduce them to you guys here on YouTube in a longer form video. I'd also like to really make a lore video for LaRue. She's not a well-known D&D deity, and I'd like to encourage more people to try and play a character who worships a not so well-known deity / being. This idea could work for paladins, clerics, and even warlocks. I find that the more vague the lore, the more your DM gets to play around with the deity. At least that's what my fiance says. Plus, maybe I'll also find another cleric of LaRue, or someone else in the clergy. That's probably as likely as me finding someone out there who's named Anissa, but it's worth a shot. I have heard of other Anissas, I've never met them. They're very elusive. But yeah, if you're someone that has done something like that before, or you've even just so happened to have heard of LaRue, why not leave a comment and tell me all about it? I mean, I'd love to start a conversation. Talking about D&D and art is definitely something that I'm very passionate about. And saying that, it was probably already something you could tell that I was very passionate about. D&D is definitely one of my biggest passions, and I love, love, love talking about it. I love getting to share my characters with the world, and this is a video I had been meaning to make for ages. I was just pretty scared, honestly, of putting myself out there in such a long video. It's definitely something that's very vulnerable, but I truly believe there aren't enough people talking about their D&D characters, so I wanted to add my own. I mean, I found a couple on here before, but I'm always looking for more, so I'm sure there's at least one other person that's as obsessed with listening to other people talk about their D&D characters on here as I am. Well, that's it for now, guys. This video ran much longer than I intended it to, but if I'm being honest, I'm kind of glad it did because it gave me much more of a chance to tell a bit more of her story and connect with you guys a little bit more. Thank you for watching and listening to me talk about Osha. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and even leave a comment. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!